All right, folks. So we've got a very good guest on for this week's episode of the Strong for Life podcast. I'm joined by my awesome client, James White, all the way from Florida in the East Coast of the US. And James has come into the program and has just, I was saying to him before we went live, he's just blitzed it completely. And we were having a coaching call, and I was like, do you want to just do a podcast episode instead? And he was a good sport. He was up for having a chat. So, James, thanks for jumping on, mate. Do you want to tell people a bit about who you are and where you're based?
Sure. I'm based right now in South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale. I go between here and West Palm Beach, so I have a place in, kind of both areas and go back and forth. I've been in New York City for the majority of my career, nearly 20 years, and then before that, I grew up in Tennessee. So I'm now living in Florida, enjoying some warm weather and thinking about what the next step in life is going to be.
Great, mate. Do you want to share with people where you were before coming into the program? So let's rewind like 12 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, actually, it starts without going too far back in time. It really starts about 4 years ago with the onset of COVID. And there's so much that happened during that time. We all experienced the time of kind of seclusion and not being able to get out too much, probably some stress eating and those kinds of things. And then, of course, during the COVID timeframe, I ended up leaving one job and also taking care of an elderly mom who contracted COVID and was very, very sick for a long time with it, an 83-year-old. So you can imagine what that's like for her. She subsequently gave it to me, so I was sick for about 4 months after that. And then, over that time frame too, I bought a house in Florida because everybody was buying houses in warmer climates during the COVID lockdown, and I was one of those same people. And I spent about 2 years renovating that home, which brings me up to about now. So there was a lot of sort of distracting real life experiences that were happening in that time frame, and I noticed going into a month or two into COVID a little bit of weight gain. And as we move toward the third year into that, at top of everything I just mentioned, I realized at that point it was going to be necessary to have a hip replacement. So, amongst all the other great things that were happening in life and some fun and not so fun, my mobility started to change a lot to the point where right before I realized I'm going to have a surgery, my mobility had just about stopped completely. I just barely could walk. So, luckily, I was only in that state for about a month. But leading up to that, with all the other things going on in life, I noticed some weight gain, some mobility challenges. And with mobility challenges, I noticed too, and a lot of this is in retrospect, but it was a lot of sort of realizing, how you compensate whenever you have an injury somewhere, and how other things become sort of misaligned. And I'm really aware of that now more than ever because I've been working my way out of that. But that's sort of what led me up to December of last year and really thinking about I needed some sort of intervention because I had a wedding to go to the first week of January. I wanted to slim down a little bit and get in a little bit better shape because it was in Mexico. And about a month into sort of really paying attention to what I was eating, if anything, I gained a couple pounds. So I had to, at that point, I went to the wedding, very frustrated with a lot of new clothes that I bought that I can no longer wear. And really started thinking about, well, I need to make a change here. I'm not sure what the change is yet, but one of the things that caught my eye was one of your videos where you were talking about, getting up and down off the floor with no hands. And it really caught my attention for some reason because I realized there's no way I can do that, at that point. I don't know if I could now or not, but I'm a lot closer to it than I was. And I realized there's no way I can do that. And you were sort of just hopping up and down, like it was nothing. And it started a conversation amongst me and my other friends as well. And I was saying, can you do this? Or is it just me? Or like my neighbors in my other house was like, can you do this just out of curiosity? They're around my same age. Some could, some could not, but I realized I was probably worse off than any of them. So you reached out with one of your free resources. We started chatting, and that one call, I decided to just give it a go.
Yeah, mate. One thing I'd like you to touch on is you were saying about like compensating, and you're kind of more aware now, but do you want to share that with people as well? I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, your idea, I a lot of this is in retrospect. At the time, you're just trying to sort of get to, the mailbox or get back or not, or and that in those also days I was also working on my house with lots of contractors, and if you think about that, you're stepping over 2x4s on the floor, you're electrical cords or sawdust everywhere and construction debris. So just sort of navigating a lot of that, and I realized over time in retrospect, just the way in which you're sort of trying to figure out ways in which you can move where there is less pain. I don't think it's conscious, I think it's unconscious, but it's just like when you're trying to sleep. If you're in a sort of a funny position and you move so you're more comfortable, I realized there's so much of that going on through the day, to the point of the fact that after my hip replacement, when I woke up from that surgery, every single bit of the pain was gone. That, it was sort of a radiating kind of pain. Again, as I can now see in retrospect, I had pain in my shoulders and even in my one of my elbows that was gone when I woke up and never returned. So it's sort of a radiating kind of pain. And so what I was left with was all of those muscles and other limbs that I was using to compensate for the pain on the other side. And then so I realized, well, they were kind of sore and they were kind of working in a way that seemed kind of strange, because I thought with this hips, a replacement, in place, everything else should be working as it should, and it just didn't. So I realized my left leg was supporting me in a way that it didn't need to support me anymore. So things didn't just sort of snap back. And I realized, the way in which I was carrying my back, or my, twisting and carrying my shoulders to kind of alleviate any kind of stress or pain on the right side, it didn't just snap back. They kind of stayed in those positions. And when I started working with you, and we were talking about step goals and trying to achieve steps each day, I realized I was doing things like limping and walking kind of diagonally in a way, for no reason. There was no reason to limp, because although there's a little arthritis in one of my knees, there's no reason to limp the way that I was. It was like almost like something that was inherited as a result of trying to compensate for the pain that was no longer served me. And so walking kind of strange and really increasing dramatically my step counts, it was actually causing a little bit more sort of soreness, because I was walking in a way that was kind of left over from when I had the injury. And so a lot of what we did in the beginning and just talking about this was things like focusing on gait and awareness. And that was something I really thought a lot about during those first month of walking.
Yeah, like what's coming across definitely is awareness about like how you're moving. But I guess, and I want to go into that in more detail, but the first thing would be like it's an online program. What were you skeptical about before coming in? You tried to diet before just like a few months back in January and you ended up gaining weight. So, what were you skeptical about before jumping into the program?
The program itself, there are a few things. First of all, it's online. I knew I needed something different, and I wasn't exactly sure what I needed. I had worked with in my younger days. I worked with several trainers over the years, and we would go to the gym, we would work and lift really heavy weights and all of those great things. That was a long time ago. That was the model though that was in my head. And right now we had things like some of the other CrossFit trainings. I'm aware of what's going on in a lot of the local gyms. I just didn't feel like any of that was right for me. And then the other side of that perspective was exercises for people who are also much, much older than me. And I am somebody who's very active, or who, although the activity slowed a bit the last couple of years, I was sort of caught in the middle. And one of the things that kind of caught my eye when we first started talking was the idea of something customized for me, but that wasn't for people who were 20 years old, and also not something for people who are 70 years old. And that's something that didn't really recognize my limitations long term, but more realize the potential of what I could do within the context of where I am in life right now.
Yeah, that's actually such a good point, like as well, because it's either CrossFit-esque style approach for people in their 20s, or like this is for the elderly. This is as you, when we were first talking, you're like, this is way too easy and it's just
Yeah.
not going to help me. Let's talk about breakthroughs. What happened? Can you remember? And you were like, okay, wow, this is really starting to have an impact.
Yeah. So one of the biggest breakthroughs I think was, and one of the advantages of the program is wasn't for me just about fitness, or sorry, about exercising. It was about comprehensive fitness. So we talked about AM and PM routines. Some of those things I did well already. I'm a good morning person, but it was a great check-in to just see and make sure I'm setting the tone for the day. We talked about diet, we talked about exercise, we talked about where to start with the exercise. You challenged me sometimes when I was snapping back into patterns saying I should go lift something heavy. And you were like, well, let's not really talk about that right now. Let's stay focused on how you're going to get to where you want to be right now. Strength, strengthening your legs, focusing mobility, those kinds of things are important. And so you've kind of helped me to remain focused on what my own goals were versus racing ahead to old paradigms of fitness. But what worked for me was the holistic program. And, we were talking about diet one day, and I did say, I drank a little bit, and not, I think like probably most people do. And one of the things you had said was, well, maybe you can experiment with just some parameters. Maybe you take a Monday or Tuesday off or something, or maybe this or maybe that. And that's some of the things I think that works really well for me because it hasn't been hard set rules. Some things are factual about fitness and eating and protein and all those things. Sometimes things are guidelines or something to reflect on. And so I kind of took your idea to an extreme. I just stopped altogether, drinking, that is. And I thought, well, why not? Let's just see what happens. And so, I'm starting to move a lot more, starting to walk. You had mentioned a 10,000 step goal, which I've now learned is around 5 miles or so, 5 or 6 miles. So I was thinking a little bit about that. I was, completely changed my eating habits, and started really focusing much more on sleeping, on more of a mindfulness approach, and stopped drinking. And then within about the first 5 or 6 days, for me, I'm not an advocate for drinking or not drinking. I will just say to me that within changing the overall context, with drinking being one of those levers, there were some drastic changes. I mean, there was an enormous amount of weight loss the first week or so, and I was still eating. I did definitely watch my snacks. However, when I took away the alcohol, I wanted to snack a lot less anyway. So I didn't have those kind of serious cravings I had before. Those went away. I assume it was because of the sugar. But so within about the first week, I noticed sort of and also starting to experiment with the idea of not eating for certain periods of time, fasting. I started to realize a certain lightness I had, a lightness that was more not lightheadedness, but a lightness in terms of not bogged down with food, not bloated, a lot more energy, a lot more peaceful and productive sleeps. So that was about 5 days in. And actually, within about 5 days too, I could actually see it in my face, frankly. Like there was weight loss I could see in my face that people were starting to talk about. It was about 5 days.
Amazing, mate. And yeah, I mean, we're actually we're 6 weeks in now, which is kind of crazy because it's a very short amount of time. But and I guess, well, two things. I'd like you to share your results, the three things that you're most proud of to date, and then also how sustainable it feels. I think is a very important thing I want to get across to people as well. Because
Yeah.
normally this is very fast, just for people listening. But yeah, do you want to share your results, mate? Some things that you're like, wow, I'm really, really proud of that.
Yeah, I don't think 5 days of a rapid weight loss is necessarily a mark of anyone's success. I'm just saying for myself, that was a mark of success because frankly, I had tried so hard to lose weight. And frankly, even over the last 2 years, I had really tried. I've been a person who in my lifetime has never had a weight problem. And all of a sudden I had all of this extra weight that I could not move. That was affecting me physical. So for me to lose weight in 5 days, a certain amount of weight in 5 days, there was a massive win. It was clear that the whatever levers we were pulling, things like AM and PM routines, some of the reading, just the meal plans, the exercise, kind of mindfulness kind of approach. I think all of those things together were levers that were working together to have an impact. So I think that was the biggest thing, to be honest with you, was just seeing some of the weight loss, feeling confident that maybe I could actually move the needle. I think when we first chatted, I felt like I don't know what it's going to take to get me out of this. I just felt so lost in being able to get some of my mobility back, to get some of the strength in my legs back, to just get back on track from where I knew I needed to be. And so, going into when I first started seeing some wins, I think just the idea of the weight loss, along with that came a lot more stabilized walking, I think I messaged once, a couple of weeks in that I sort of forgot about, I was walking, going for like a 30-minute walk, and about 15 minutes at the time, I just lost because I was thinking and looking at the trees and all those things. That's a massive difference for me because I'm used
Where
to looking at the ground and being so afraid of falling.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing just to clarify for people. So, like beforehand, and this was, I think, after 3 or 4 weeks, you were saying about these benefits. So,
Yeah.
beforehand, do you want to just explain to people what your walks were like or how they felt?
Yeah. So before I started, when we first started working together, I felt my legs were very rigid. I didn't feel like I had a lot of strength. I was afraid there's something I think that's left over from that idea of trying not to cause pain, before my surgery. There's something left over is like move as little as possible, even when you want to walk from here to here, and to kind of get around the idea of movement, of what happens to your body when you're walking. What does a healthy walk actually look like? I think that was really powerful. But also just realizing, I remember in the group chat, one of the comments was, my scuffing rate, the rate at which I'm scuffing my feet on the ground is dramatically different. I think when I first started, I was just dragging my feet. I was also afraid to pick them up, afraid to use those muscles. It's all psychological, I think. Because when I did do that, when I did incorporate more movement, more picking up my knee, picking up my foot, placing on the ground in front of me, it didn't hurt. And so there's a little bit of just working through that, but that kind of rigidity and walking, scuffing my feet, which also causes more stumbles. I realized if I just pick up my feet, I don't stumble so much. And also I can pick up my feet and nothing hurts. And all of a sudden, just accepting that and embracing that was pretty powerful because it allowed me to kind of go and add on more and more and more steps. So I'm up to just pretty much an average of 9 to 10,000 steps a day now.
Amazing. And you're not looking at where you're going, you're just kind of enjoying your walks now?
No, enjoying the walk. If anything, I mean, it's sort of a productive time because I can think about other things and not, wow, this hurts. I'm afraid I'm going to fall and hurt something, make something worse. Because you always had to be careful of that. A year ago, I'm about a year anniversary of my surgery. So you had to be so careful of that because if you stumbled or something, it hurt for like a long time. Things never really got settled back. So to be able to walk and enjoy a walk and actually look at the birds of South Florida and get some productive thinking time, set some goals, think about what I need to accomplish before the end of the day. I mean, that's a great luxury. I hadn't felt that in I feel like a few years.
Yeah, that's so good, mate. And then from a weight loss standpoint, what were you at on day one and where are you now 6 weeks in?
So I was 200.4 pounds. Our first call, I weighed right before we spoke, first time ever. And now I have lost 23.8 pounds.
Wow.
I
That's
was
in
at
6 weeks.
76.6, something like that.
Yeah, that's amazing, mate. We were talking about that just before we went live. And how has it felt from a difficulty sustainability standpoint?
As far as the weight loss or just the program as a whole.
But well, both, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's been easy. I think for me, I really thought a lot about the value of all the different program components and probably overthought them. But that's sort of something that was important to me because I wanted them to be not a task. If I'm thinking about eating, or if I'm thinking about the AM and PM routine, or the journaling, or the workouts, I wanted them to become as routine as possible. It's kind of baked into the fiber of the day and not programmatic. And I've said that to you a couple of times. Like, I want this to be much less programmatic and much more just lifestyle, something I don't even think about. Maybe something I'm thinking about that I'm trying to improve or something like that, but not something, a program has a beginning date and an ending date. And so I wanted to kind of take that time frame and apply it to the programmatic aspect and kind of put that aside and really, really work hard to make sure that this becomes a lifestyle, something I don't think about. So I started to really think about the things that are short-term lifestyle changes, like the diet. That's pretty easy to correct and get back on track. The no drinking, so easy actually. I was out with friends all weekend this past weekend, and nobody cared that I was drinking
Yeah.
seltzer.
Yeah.
We're told that you're going to be ostracized. That's not really the case. If you are, you're probably the wrong friends.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't even an issue. And so all of those things very quickly became a part of the lifestyle. And the benefits of those things were so great. It wasn't like I was nervous about doing something with outside the scope of how I view the lifestyle because the benefits were so good. I feel so good. Why do I want to eat a whole pizza? I feel too good. I don't want to give this up. I'm moving so much more. I'm outside all the time now because I can enjoy it, not sit on a bench somewhere. So why do I want to do anything like less moving, like less working out that's going to get in the way of me enjoying my bicycle and my walks and all the beautiful spring weather? So it becomes a way that something that kind of feeds itself, I think, if it's well positioned. And so I'm not so concerned that one day I won't be, I might be an alumni of this program, but I won't be a daily member of the program because I'm working so hard to embed all of these just into a lifestyle, something that I'll always work to perfect and improve and all of those things, but not something I'll do as a part of a program, something that's more of a fundamental change in lifestyle.
Yeah, that's exactly it, mate. Like nail on the head. Like it's the identity shift. This is just part of what you do, and you don't
Yeah.
even really think about it. It's just baked in. Mate, I'm so grateful for you sharing your experience to date, and you should be so proud of yourself. You've just came in, executed, you've brought so much value to the program as well. Any last thoughts before we jump off? Because there's a group call starting in like 3 minutes that we need to get off Zoom for.
No, no, no. All perfect. Thanks for everything. Thanks for all of the support, and I can't wait for the next month to pass by and to look back and see where we are.
Amazing, mate. Have a great evening, all right?
You too. Thank you.